All right. Welcome to the extended cut of It's Not Normal, the podcast, episode 7. In this week's episode, we talked about the narcissist's obsession with control and how and why they foster a sense of dependency in their kids. We talked about everything from the time my parents surprised me at an Imagine Dragons concert when I was 21 years old, to the time they hid my keys to my van, to how equating love with control can be a really common and difficult offshoot of growing up in such a controlling environment for such an extended period of time. I posted a TikTok talking about this Imagine Dragons story, and I got a ton of your comments that I would love to go through. Obviously, this is something that resonates not only with me, but also with you, so let's get into them. The first comment is from Alyssa, who said, "I'm so sorry. My parents used to be like that so much to the point I tell them nothing anymore, and somehow they still know too much." One of the first things that I saw about narcissists and narcissism on TikTok was a list of 5 things that you should never tell a narcissist. And one of them was your plans, your aspirations, your goals for the future. And that one couldn't have resonated any more with me. I basically approach my relationship with my parents now. I'm about 6 months no contact. I don't tell them anything that I wouldn't be comfortable with the entire world knowing. And that's been really beneficial to me. And it's, on one hand, it's upsetting because you want to be able to confide in your parents and to go to them for advice or to talk about, more sensitive subjects with them. But when you're dealing with a narcissist, if you tell them about a plan of yours or a goal of yours, something that's taking place in the future, and if they don't like it, if they don't want you to do it, if it doesn't sit well with them for whatever reason, all you're doing by telling them about this thing ahead of time is giving them time to figure out how they can sabotage it. How can they make this thing not happen? How can they discourage you from doing it? How can they maybe figure out a way to involve themselves in a way that's really just inappropriate? And, I just got married a few months ago, and that was a similar approach where, instead of saying like, oh, I can rely on my parents to do this, this, and this, and, I trust them with this responsibility, and, I'm looking forward to all of this. I want to share with them all of my ideas and my plans. It was very much the opposite, where it's like, okay, what is the minimum amount of involvement here to ensure that everything goes over smoothly? And it's sad when you can't share all of these things that you want to with your parents, but it's better in a lot of cases not to, out of self-preservation, and it makes these things actually happen. There's a lot less negativity surrounding them. It's much less complicated. I don't have time for a real anecdote here, but there was a time when I had my art in a gallery in Manhattan, and it was a really big thing. It was an event that was planned months in advance, and, my parents knew about it. I worked on this for months and months and months. Long story short, the day of, my dad tries to sabotage the entire thing, saying that he's going to call the gallery owner and that, because they weren't invited. I understand what you're saying. I might do an episode about that at some point in the future, but the next comment is from Miami, who said, "And if you confront them, but we were worried, we care so. You weren't happy to see us? You don't love us? You don't want to spend time together?" Exactly. It's hard enough to talk about these things, like getting picked up or dropped off at school or, whatever it is on the surface that seem really kind and generous and honest, like these just really nice things that your parents are doing for you. Oh, they drove all this way to show up to make sure that I was safe. What a great cover for control for narcissists. But I love you and I want to spend time with you and I care about you. I just want to make sure that nothing bad happens. I am such a fan of preparing your kids instead of hovering over them. Because the truth of the matter is, at one point or another, your kid is going to grow up and go out into the world and be faced with a number of different situations, good, bad, and everything in between. And if for their entire childhood, their entire life growing up under your care, they were sheltered and you hovered over them to just eliminate or minimize the possibility of anything bad happening ever, it's going to make it that much worse for them when they're an adult, thrust out into the world, and they're faced with a situation that they have no idea what to do about. If you can prepare your kids in a safe environment, you can have an open and honest dialogue about everything, good, bad, ugly, whatever it might be, so that when your kid encounters these things later in life, maybe they have a little bit of an idea how to handle it. They're a little bit more comfortable in this situation because it's something that they've thought about before, something that you've talked with them about before. You can't protect them from everything. And if you try to, like I said, it's just going to make it that much harder for them at some point down the road. All right, the next comment is from Safa Tarek 77, who said, and the fact that they bought your sister and themselves tickets but let you pay for yours is insane, to be honest. Yeah, I didn't really think about that until I read this comment, and that's kind of why I wanted to talk about it. I came to a realization at one point, especially once I had my own job finally, that if I wanted to do something, especially if it involved me going somewhere or doing something on my own, it was so much easier for me to just take care of it myself and to buy it or pay for it myself and not ask my parents, especially if I didn't want the experience to be tainted or anything like that, to just kind of go at it on my own. But it does make me think of, again, I just got married, and it makes me think of the time that I went dress shopping with my mom. Now, despite everything, I was like, okay, do you want to go dress shopping with me? And she was like, yeah, after work. Fine. Okay, cool. So my husband and I, our wedding was not conventional or traditional in the slightest. It was very small, very intimate. We didn't want to spend a lot of money. For us, it was just about our love and becoming husband and wife and spending it with, our immediate families. We didn't want anything big. So the same method of thinking applied to my dress. So I was sitting at home one day and I get a call from my mom or my sister, and they were at TJ Maxx. They were like, oh, they actually have some kind of nice dresses here. Do you want us to send some pictures or do you want to come and look? And I was like, okay, cool. Let me take a trip. I'll come and look. And so sure enough, I find this really nice, slim fitting, off-white satin, calf length dress. It had a little bit of a slit on it, really skinny straps, a little bit of a sweetheart neckline. It was really beautiful. And the reason that I liked it so much was because I felt like it didn't ascribe to any particular style. I felt like someone could have worn this in the 1930s and also in 50 years time, and it still would have been perfectly acceptable, it would pass. And so I tried it on, and sure enough, it fit really well. And I was like, this is great. This is my dress. So we're going up to the checkout. Now, I had also picked up a pair of shoes that matched the dress and some full butt seamless underwear because this was a satin dress. It shows everything. So I had to be prepared. So we go up to the counter and my mom's like, oh, I'm going to buy you your dress. And I was like, wow, thank you. That's actually really nice. Keep in mind, the dress was $25. My shoes, I think, were $30. And the 3-pack of seamless underwear was less than 10. So we get up to the counter and sure enough, my mom just meant, I'm going to buy you your dress. Now, if my parents couldn't spare the $25, I completely understand. That's a completely different story. I understand that there are people out there where that's a lot and I cannot contribute in this way. And that is perfectly fine. But my mom had things in her hand that she was buying for herself. She had a couple hangers worth of things that she was just picking up for herself. And so she bought my dress, but didn't buy my shoes or the underwear. And I remember thinking to myself, this feels a little strange, right? Because people spend tens of thousands of dollars on a wedding dress. And I'm standing here in TJ Maxx on a Thursday with a $25 dress. The total for my entire head to toe wedding outfit was less than $60, and it felt to me kind of like she was just doing this for the sake of doing it, just to say oh, I did this thing for you. And it felt really strange, and I couldn't help but just feel just save it. If you're not going to do this whole thing, I felt the motivation behind it was just so negative, and it was just weird to me that it felt really strange. But yeah, I feel the same thing kind of applies here, where they didn't have to buy themselves tickets. Maybe they bought my sister a ticket too. Maybe they had this idea where it was a little bit of supervision. She could keep them posted. Maybe she'll see what's going on. There's another member of the family there, And then they bought their own tickets. They paid enough gas money to drive 3 hours away and to buy their own tickets outside instead of contributing to my birthday present. Their desire for control, their need to maintain control was stronger than their want to contribute or to gift me anything. The next comment is from Satust. I don't know if I said that right. Who said, and that kind of thing gives you the horrible feeling that you're always being followed or watched. This started for me when I was in high school. And, you know, if I was in school or if I was hanging out with my friends, I was always so scared that I had accidentally pocket dialed my parents, or, you know, maybe they called me and I accidentally picked up and now they were listening to this conversation, especially if I was talking about them or about something that I wouldn't typically talk to them about or I didn't want them to know. I think it really just comes down to just plain old paranoia. And it's exactly right. The same thing where it's like, I didn't know that my parents were planning on showing up at this concert. And now all of a sudden, here they are. So you can't help but just kind of carry that feeling of like someone's listening to me, someone's watching me, someone's following me. I feel judged. I feel like I'm not alone. It's paranoia. I think that's the simplest way to put it. And I completely understand where you're coming from. I, again, didn't realize that I was experiencing that until a few months, maybe even a year after I moved out of my parents' house, and I would still just instinctively check my phone anytime I brought them up in conversation. And I was like, oh my God, not everyone does this. The next comment is from Twyla Bear, who said, my parent would threaten to call the police if I didn't respond to her phone calls or texts in an appropriate time, well into my 20s. I got more so like, I'm going to shut your phone off. You know, you're not going to have a phone anymore. This was especially ramped up after I met my husband when we were just boyfriend and girlfriend at the time. They did not take kindly to the idea of me having a boyfriend, even though he was my first and I was 21 years old, almost 22 at the time. And I remember one time being over his house and it was really late and I had fallen asleep and my phone was on vibrate and it wasn't near me. And I woke up to like a million missed calls and text messages and like that sinking feeling that you get when you wake up and like pick up your phone and it's just like missed calls from your parents. It's just like, oh no, like what am I going to do now? Like, what do I say? And it was awful. It was totally awful. And so I got that a lot. I was also told or threatened, I guess, with the police being called and being told that I was trespassing for me just trying to go back to my parents' house to get some of my own things. So I completely understand where you're coming from, and I'm really sorry that you've had to deal with that. The next comment is from Penny, who said, my narcissist mom inserts herself into everything I do. Got offended when I went to the movies alone at 28 years old. Still gets offended when I go to the grocery store without her because she thinks I'm leaving her behind, and has forbidden me from traveling alone, including after she's dead. Narcissistic parents are one hell of a mindfuck. That they are. All of this is so confusing. That's a lot, though. Like, how does that come out of your mouth? Like, you cannot travel without me even after I'm long gone. Like, how does that come out of your mouth and you don't stop for a minute and think like, okay, maybe that was a bit much. But it makes me think of the time when I was in high school after prom. It was like a tradition for everyone who went to prom to go down the shore, to the Jersey Shore. And I knew that this was going to be a tough sell with my parents. But luckily, I had a friend who had a house down there. And I had gone down there a couple of times with her family. My parents knew her family. We had been friends for a few years. So I was like, this is the way that I'm going to be able to do this thing that like most kids my age are doing and still have it be okay with my parents. Because I wasn't going to be renting a house like from a stranger or staying in a motel. Like, I was going to a safe place that I had been to before. Sure enough, I bring it up, caused a massive argument. And I remember my narcissist parent just saying like, well, I want to go down the shore. You know how much I love it down there and I can't do that. So how is that fair? Like, why should you be able to go? And if I can't, you know how much I would love to go. And it's like, because it's my life. You know what I mean? Like, you're in control of your life and I'm in control of mine. And just because you're unable to do something or you're choosing not to do something doesn't mean that I should feel guilted into missing out on an experience of my own. And yeah, I mean, they feel like they need to be involved in absolutely everything. Like, they have a right to be involved in everything. And if you're doing something that they want to do, but they are unable to for whatever reason, I mean, it's like, how dare you? It's like you're committing a crime. And it's so normal to just do I feel like the ideology, at least that I would always assume of parents, is like, I just want you, my kids, to have like a better life than me, or to have more opportunities than me, to do more things than I did. And I think when you're dealing with narcissist parents, it's the complete opposite, where it's like, no, if I didn't get to do those things, like, you're not going to get to do them either. It's really strange. And all right, the last comment that we've got is from Eel First, who said, "It's kind of difficult for others to understand because this sounds like caring parents that just care about their children." I totally know what you mean. I feel like that whole, we talked about this in a little bit in an earlier comment, the whole like, oh, I just love you and I care about you and I don't want anything bad to happen to you. Like, it's a really easy cover for narcissists. And I think it's also such it's a confusing thing to deal with in the first place as a kid, because like, you're getting these mixed signals from your parents. And anytime you question them to someone, or you talk about them to someone who hasn't experienced that, or they don't understand, I guess, like the gravity of the situation, what's really going on, you can feel like an entitled little ungrateful brat, because it's like, wow, your mom or dad like picks you up and drops you off at school every day, like, you poor thing. And it's like, no, you don't understand. Like, it can be really hard to articulate, especially because it's so confusing in the moment that you don't even entirely know what's going on. And to express this to someone who, it's so bizarre also, like, who would do things like that when you say them out loud to people who have never experienced that kind of abuse, it's just like completely out of left field. And it's like, what? Like, no, what are you talking about? And yeah, it's hard enough to understand on your own. And I feel like trying to explain it to other people adds an entirely new and different layer of complexity to it all. And I think that's one of the reasons that I've been so passionate about making this podcast a thing, and why I've been posting on TikTok so frequently about all of these things, because the only way to, I guess, raise awareness about these topics and to make them more known and less taboo when people do bring them up is to talk about them, is to start a conversation about them. And I'm finding that the more that I do this, the more comments and messages I'm getting from people saying, I feel less alone. And, you're explaining this thing that I haven't been able to articulate to my partner for years. And that makes me so happy, because it was a really hard time to get here to where I am now. And if sharing what I've learned along the way is of any benefit to even one person, then it's absolutely worth doing. And I mean, with that, that's about all the time that I've got for comments today, but I will be back very soon with another extended cut of It's Not Normal, the podcast. Thanks to everybody who's following me here on Patreon and supporting. I really appreciate it. Bye.